I'm Varun Rajan. Welcome to the Push Pull podcast, where we interview people about their careers and specifically the push and pull factors that inform their career transitions. Today's guest, Julia Levina, has lived more lives than most of us imagine in a single career. She's a trained counseling psychologist from Ukraine, a former CFO of a family-owned pharmacy chain, a business consultant, and currently a behavioral scientist and business intelligence analyst at Headversity, a Canadian workplace mental health company. But those titles don't really capture her story. Julia joined me from Alberta, Canada, where she moved to from Ukraine after the war started in 2022. And what struck me most in our conversations wasn't just her professional agility, it was her deep practiced understanding of what resilience really looks like. We talk about her early exposure to psychotherapy as a teenager in a culture that didn't talk about mental health. We also talk about her experience helping to run and ultimately shut down a family business with the backdrop of war, economic turmoil, a regulatory environment that was increasingly hostile to small businesses, and how she transformed that adversity into purpose, designing coaching experiences for companies and individuals, applying theory to real life, and even volunteering to help Ukrainian refugees get resettled in the countries that they ultimately moved to, and at the end of the day, taking the chance on herself to move to an entirely different continent. She shares what it means to find clarity when everything around you is falling apart and how that clarity helped her rebuild her life from a suitcase, a cat carrier, and a stranger's spare room when she landed in Canada. Along the way, we also dive into the psychology of healthy workplaces and workplace longevity, what makes someone stay at a company beyond just the perks or the paycheck. Julia's take is sharp. She ties internal motivation, communicating clearly, and the underrated power of friendship into something deeply human. This episode is full of reflection, but it's also incredibly practical. Whether you're a manager trying to build a better culture or someone figuring out your next chapter, I think Julia's story is going to leave you thinking about what it really means to belong to a workplace, to your values, to a larger society, or even just to yourself. So this might be one of my favorite interviews I've ever gotten to conduct, and I'm really excited for you to listen to Julia's story. So without any further ado, here's Julia. Okay, we're here with Julia Levina, a counseling psychologist with a background in behavioral science and a business intelligence analyst at Headversity. Thanks for being with us, Julia.
Thanks for inviting me. It's great to be here. Thanks.
Wonderful. There's so much that I want to ask you, obviously, about your career and all of the things that you have learned there and are exploring today, kind of in the workplace wellness and dynamism space. But first and foremost, I would love to turn it over to you and just get a sense of who are you, how would you summarize yourself, and what's important to you today?
Oh, that's a good question. Thank you so much. Yeah, as you said, I work as a business intelligence analyst. So mostly I deal with data, financial data, and all the other data that you can only imagine about the company. So I find it very exciting to actually gather and collect whatever data company can have and see what it actually shows to you. So what insights can you get from it? What insights can inform any further business moves, business decisions? This is a very interesting topic for me. But in the off hours, I continue counseling people as a psychologist because I have dual background in both business and psychology. And for me, these two fields were never separated because in any case, you will deal with people. Like in any condition, in any situation, you will deal with other people, and understanding how people think, why they think this way, and why they make these decisions and not another decisions. I find it very interesting and very curious. I'm always fascinated about how differently all of us thinking and how differently we get to the same conclusions. We can actually come to the same result, but the path would be completely various. And yeah, that's basically who I am. So I'm originally from Ukraine. I came to Canada 3 years ago, and actually in June In few weeks, it's going to be 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and I work with Headversity since August the same year I came here. So again, in 2 months, it's going to be also 3 years since I started with Headversity. And back in Ukraine, I was a counseling psychologist, and before that, for 9 years, I worked in a family business. It was a pharmacy chain, and I started from basically from dealing with documents as a assistant, accountant assistant, and then I grew up in the company. So I went through all the stages
Yeah.
to the position of what called in Canada chief financial officer. So my job was to make all the financial decisions in the company. How are we going to pay our vendors, when are we going to pay, what contracts to sign, what deals to sign, and so on and so forth. So that's why I'm saying that I have dual background in both business and psychology. And yeah.
Yeah. What if I were to take a step back and ask you where your career started? Was that your first job? Did you see your career there long
Oh,
term?
basically, yes. So I can say that it was my first job because I started working there when I was 12.
Oh wow. Okay. Family business.
Yes, it's a family business, so you use as much resources as you can, and your kids are also resource,
Of course.
but in a very good way. So yeah, it was my first job, and it was my like after a while when I grew up and when I got my first degree, it was my first long term job.
Were you so you were kind of like working there as you were growing up, going to school and everything like that. When you ended up going to university, were you still working there part time? Family business. I'm sure it's a big part of your life, right?
Yeah.
Did you also have siblings? How did it kind of influence your whole life and relationships with family and things like that?
So, in my case, I worked there part time when I was 12, 13, 14. Then I moved to another city because I went to another college basically. So that's why I had to move and that's why I stopped working there. But when I got into the university, after maybe like a third course, when we started to get assignments in about the real field situation, like real life situations, I went back to my family company and started to gather data that I used to write all the courseworks during like my third, fourth, and fifth course in the university. So then, like, this is how I got back, basically. And
So
yeah,
am I hearing you right? When you were in school, there was stuff that you were learning about, like real life applications and stuff in your coursework, like in
yeah,
the business world, and you were able to refer back
yeah,
to the family business to actually inform the work that you were
yes,
doing for your courses.
yeah.
That is
Yeah,
super
it was
cool.
very cool. It was actually very cool because you learn a lot of theory, and since you have no chance to get to like really real working company, it still remains theory for you. But in my case, I had this chance, so I took this theory. I went to my father and I told, "Hey, this is what we are going through. This is what like I've been learned about. Is this actually how it works in real life?" And he sit with me for a while and then he told, "No, it's not how it works in real life, not at all. It's an ideal situation. So if we forgot about government, if we forgot about laws, if we forgot about taxes, if we forgot about all of that stuff, yes, it's how it works in theory, but in real life, no, it's not. It's not how it is." Yeah. And
How did that change your perspective on your education at the time?
it added a lot of doubts in what I was taught about, because I actually started to ask instructors during the lectures, especially like in microeconomy or something like that, and like business stuff. I started to ask them, "Do you have any real life examples of how it works?" And I was probably the only one who asked these questions. And at some point,
Uh-huh.
the whole my group that I learned with, the whole my group, when they wanted to wanted the conversation to last longer, they like poked me like, "Can you ask a few questions, please?" So yeah, it was
Oh,
funny.
that's wonderful. I'm sure the lecturers loved you.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what brought you back to the family business full time. Were you wrapping up with school?
Yes.
What did you have other options on the table, or did you always kind of know you were coming back to the family business?
I had other options on the table, and in my case, it was connected with the moving back from the city where I learned when I studied, and moving back to the city where my actually parents live and where this business was. So I had an option to stay in the bigger city, but I decided that I already know the company. It's my family. I can be very helpful there, and I also have a lot of knowledge, and this knowledge is checked by practice, by practical experience already. So why not to get back to the company where everything basically started? And yes,
Yeah.
one of the reasons that I pursued the degree in management was because my father had a company.
Yeah.
So like I already knew that it's something valuable.
So you came back and you kind of worked your way up over time until you become CFO of this company,
Yeah.
which is fantastic. What happened? What happened after that?
Haha, the war started. That was the most interesting part for me as for CFO, because you have to deal with all the situations in current abilities of finding any resources, financial resources, people resources, like goods resources,
Right.
any resources. So I worked my way to this position in like 2 years, maybe 2 3 years. And as soon as I started, after 4 months, the war started. And I had to figure out very fast and very quickly how to close the credit line with the bank, because they will not continue it, because we live in the risk territory, and they are not
Right.
interested in continuing any credit lines with all the businesses in this territory. I also
Right.
had to figure out how to change the hiring policy, because people move away from this territory, and you lack resources, you lack people. So also had to figure out how to manage risks when you are dealing with logistics of the delivery, because companies who produce all the stuff, they are in other regions, and they basically have to deliver goods on the, again, risk territory, meaning what about insurance, what about any risks. So how can we be sure that people who we send as the drivers of the trucks, how can we be sure that they will get back safely if they
You
didn't?
are already in charge of
Yeah,
like finances
yeah,
and like supply chains for this
yeah,
business, and you're trying to keep the lights on and keep this going during wartime.
yeah,
People are leaving, and like you got to make sure things are delivered. The bank doesn't want to
yeah,
continue the credit line because they don't know if you're going to be around
yeah.
literally in an
So
indefinite period of time.
basically in one point of the time, and I'm talking about weeks, so it's very fast. So it's like one point at a time. At one point at a time, as a business, you become cut of all the external resources that you were using for a while, and you can rely only on yourself. So you should understand what internal resources you have. How can you
Right.
allocate them differently? How can you switch priorities internally? So what can you do with all the goods that are there in your pharmacies? So how can you adjust the policies about, okay, we are not going to keep goods for 3 months, we're going to keep only for 1 month because of all this stuff. So like how to rebuild the software that you're using for all of that. So like a lot of things, like it was intense.
Yeah. My goodness. And this was in, I'm just looking at your LinkedIn. This was in Luhansk.
Lugansk region, the city
Oh,
called,
okay.
yes, it's Lugansk region, the city called Severodonetsk, but it's a
Okay.
long name, so Lugansk region.
Luhansk region.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So Tell me a little bit about, so obviously what happened, the war happened. I'm also curious about the kind of the psychology side of things. When did
Hmm.
you start getting interested in that? When did you go to school for that? When, like, what ended up happening with the business? You're obviously, this is a family business, and there's like world breaking events that are happening that are causing you to have to pivot and shift and really understand a whole new set of constraints that
Hmm.
most business owners or like people who are running businesses don't have to think about,
Yeah,
right? So
luckily don't.
I know there's a lot of context there, but I'm trying to understand where all of this comes into play with your background.
Okay, so in my case, when I met my psychotherapist when I was 15, so it was long before any university. And I've been going through the therapy for 15 years after that, like with some breaks, but most of the times we were still connected and still communicating. And when you are a 15-year-old toddler, basically, and you start to deal with your own mental health, and also you start to talk about all the mental health stuff. For me, it was like opening a new world, and I was very curious about that. Uh, and at the same time, as I mentioned, my father had a business on his side, and I was still
Yeah.
curious about the business side of things. So that's why psychology and views of like famous psychologists of the world history, I think like all of this shaped me as a person and also built the interest in psychology of other people, like how other people think and how their brain works. And on the
Yeah.
other side, it was always a business stuff that I was curious about. So when my parents asked me one day before, when we were thinking about which university I'm going to go, so they asked me like, "What are you actually interested about?" I told money and people. That was my
Hmm.
answer.
Yeah.
And like marrying people for them was okay, then it's something related to economics, to business side of things, so you will pursue that degree first. I say okay. And when I graduated in 2010, when I got my master's degree in management, in business management, I after a year I went to another university to pursue a psychology degree.
Sorry.
So I got a chance to get both degrees before the first stage of the war in 2014.
Got it.
Yeah, so when the most interesting time come, I was armed with all the knowledge and understanding.
I'm also curious a little bit about, when it comes to psychotherapy,
Hmm.
there's been a lot of conversation about this and increasing conversations about this, at least in like North America, especially during COVID. There was a proliferation of all of these therapy speak and BetterHelp and all these other companies. One of the things that I think before that I used to think about a lot, and a lot of people here would talk about, was this kind of like stigma of psychotherapy. So I'm really encouraged, and also like I'm very interested to know that you started actually seeing a therapist when you were a teenager.
Hmm.
What was that like for you? Was that something that was culturally kind of understood and accepted? Was your family very supportive of that kind of thing? There's so much interesting about kind of like where you were working a family business, starting to go to school, having these kind of like dual track interests of people and money, and also like going to therapy for the first time at a very young age. So I'm curious, what was the emotional environment like for you supported making that choice?
So in my case, and also like, so this is Ukraine. When I was 15, let me count. It was 2003. So Ukraine in 2000s, in early 2000s, is the place where psychotherapy is not very spread out. It's something that not everyone do. And
Right.
even so, in my case, my parents were interested in finding a common ground with me specifically, because we had like very messy relationships that time. So basically they did what most of the parents do. They took their kid, they bring their kid to the psychotherapist and told the psychotherapist, here is my kid, fix them.
Okay.
That was the request. So all the psychotherapists who deal with such parents, they say, okay, leave the kid here and we will talk about it. And the first sessions, of course, happened with my parents, because like every problem of the kid comes from parents most of the times. So if you want to fix the kid, you need to fix yourself first.
Yeah.
And then, of course, so they got the right direction from my therapist, and they accepted it, and that made them even more interested in my communication with him. So the work happened on few levels. So he worked with me while he was working with them too for a while. And so they were supportive, but out of all of my friends and friends of my parents, no one did this.
Hmm.
So it was culturally, it was something that really was stigmatized. So if you are visiting as therapist, meaning like you're psycho, that time, and that was a cultural thing.
Yeah.
And no one called this stigma. Everyone thought it's normal thing. So stigma is something that came maybe like 10, 15 years later.
Right.
Understanding that thinking this way is actually stigmatizing a person who needs just like normal help.
Right. There wasn't even a word
Yeah,
for that
yeah,
attitude
yeah.
towards therapy at
Yes,
the time.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I didn't share a lot that I am visiting therapist. My parents knew that was enough because they were interested in that and they paid for these sessions.
So we fast forward a little bit
Yep.
to kind of where you are in the business. And so now there was the first time around, like
Yeah.
2014-ish, that was like the kind of like early parts of this kind of extended war,
Yeah.
that really ramped up again in
Yeah.
2022. Tell me more about kind of like wrapping up your time with the family business,
Hmm.
and anything else that is relevant to your story between the childhood, discovering, psychology, going to school for it later on, and being very involved in the family
Hmm.
business.
Yeah, so since 2014, like it was a rough half year or maybe a year with the war and also with the economic situation. So I had to not only deal with all the like stuff that related to the war conditions, but also when the war like froze. So all the like they agreed where everyone stays, when they stopped to move around. So they draw the line, the new border lines and everything. So after that, Ukraine went through the hard economic crisis, because before the war, like $1 was about 10 Ukrainian hryvnias. And after this, so it was in the beginning of the year, but in the end of the year, we came to $1 was 40 Ukrainian hryvnias.
Oof.
So it impacts, even though you operate inside the country, you don't deal with foreign currencies a lot, but a lot of goods that we were selling, they were imported from other countries and they were imported for the foreign currency, meaning the prices skyrocket. So
Right.
you also have to deal with it. And yeah, the supply that you
Because
have.
the country is at risk. There's less demand for the Ukrainian currency, and like, as a result, everything that you're importing gets way more
Yeah,
expensive.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And for business, it means that the supply that you made, when you sell it for the price that you already set, you will not have enough money to buy the same quantity that you had before. So yeah, we had to deal with that too. It was the end of 2014, but we got through this, and we got through this pretty successfully. So we kept all pharmacies, we kept our bulk license, we kept our clients. It was a lot of work, but we made it. That was good. And during this time, before between like 14 and 18, 19, a lot of things happened in general. So digitalization came.
Hmm.
You started to be able to do so many things that you were not able to do before because of the digital stuff, because of the software, because of all of that. That allowed huge companies to appear in Ukraine, huge pharmacy companies, who were monopolizing the market. So they become basically like the giant who order stuff for all the pharmacies throughout the country, meaning like we are talking about order for like 2,000 pharmacies at a time. So that's a lot. And alongside with digitalization, also I don't know the word how to explain it, but the basic point is that companies who were resellers of their pharmacy goods, they build a lot of smaller warehouse, and they started to provide service of delivery to the pharmacy, not to your own warehouse if you have a chain of pharmacies, but the
Okay.
pharmacy itself could make an order from the huge supplier company, and they will get this order, even if it doesn't worth even $1,000. So they will still get this order on their to their door, meaning you don't have to have the whole logistics system if you're a private business. You don't have to have it. You will put all this cost and all this efforts on the side of your supplier, which also helped these huge companies to operate on the Ukrainian market.
Right.
And because they were so successful, they also came to the government and pushed the bill about the changes in the licensing conditions. And
Mm.
what they did is that they killed small suppliers like my company was. So they were not interested in any competition. They were interested in conquering all the market, meaning if you have even like smaller piece of it, you will be under fire. And this is what they did during 2014 until like 2018.
What were the kinds of things that they were arguing for? Was it just like liberalization of whatever licensing framework that your industry had to make it easier for them to operate?
No, it was
Um,
it was the opposite. It was strict the licensing conditions the way that small business cannot even afford it. So they did the opposite. And because they are a huge company, they have all this, they have to build a lot of the processes that they put into this licensing conditions because they are a huge company. You will not be able to operate efficiently in any other way. But if you're a small company, you don't need all of that. That will drown you, which actually happened.
yeah.
So in 2018, we still had a like very nice year. It was one of the best during like last 10 years financially. And in
Yeah.
2019, in January, after 2 weeks of January, I understood that we have a drop in our goods turnover for like 45%, meaning like that's also interesting case too. How can you overcome the drop off in your turnover for 45%? Like you have financial plans, like you have bills to pay, you have all these agreements to fulfill, and so on. So yeah, we were trying to fight this situation, but most of all it happened because all these big companies, they came to the region that was risky before, but after like since 2014 a lot of years pass, so people got used to the war situation in this region. They realized that it might be risky but not that risky, so we can still operate there. There is still a market there, there is still money there, so we can go there. And they came to our region, and yeah, it worked out like this. So we had wonderful 2018, but in January 2019, right after the new year, we saw a huge drop off. And We did everything that we could. Like I rebuilt salary system, I rebuilt pricing system, I rebuilt everything that I could rebuild. We launched everything. We worked with new policies for about half a year, and we were able to get from the minus to the 0 point, which was awesome. But we
Yeah.
still, but we still couldn't get to benefit part, to plus section. And this is when we
Yeah.
decided that, okay, probably we need to shut down. Probably we need to reorient. And I found a way how to not kick people off. So I found a company who agreed to take all the pharmacies in lease, basically in rent. So we rented out all the pharmacies to them. And also, they were interested in taking people too. So they agreed to continue paying people salaries while they are arranging all the changes in the pharmacies, but they don't want to lose the people. So that was one of the achievements that I think were
Yeah.
that I think I'm happy about, because I was able not to kick everyone off.
Yeah. You didn't have to lay anyone
Yeah.
off. Were these pharmacies that you guys were running that you ended up having these other companies acquire, like certain
So
locations,
we were
or?
owners of the real estate where the
Okay.
pharmacy is operating.
Got it.
And also, we were owners of everything that is there in the pharmacy. And by licensing conditions, you have to have specific set for the pharmacy. So
Yep.
company who come to rent out the place for the goal of opening their pharmacy there, they already have everything set up. So they don't
Yep.
need to work on that. They don't need to rebuild the internal stuff and
Right.
everything. So they were interested in all of that. And also finding people, like here in Canada, to become pharmacist, you need to have degree, and also you need to be licensed for that. Same in Ukraine. So that's why to find a pharmacist is a task. In
Uh,
2019, I started, when all of this happened, I was starting to think, if this business will not get over it, what should I do? And basically, it was not a long thought process. So I already understood that, okay, I know a lot about psychology, I know a lot about business. So I probably should try myself in some crossing of these areas. And
yeah.
this is how first business consulting came in. And the combination of instruments that are provided with psychology knowledge, and when you are able to put it in the business environment. And
Mhm.
this is how I started like consulting during all of that happened with the business. But I already
Yeah.
started consulting people, and this is how I then transit.
Ultimately, what happened with the business? Did you guys have to ultimately shut it down, or like
Yeah.
just keep it operating for the purposes of collecting the rent?
Yes.
How did everything
Yes.
work out with your family? It must have been really tough.
Yeah, it was tough, especially for my father, because he was an owner of this business, and he started it in 1994.
Wow.
And it was 2019 when we were thinking about shutting it down. So yeah, we ended up collecting a rent basically for all the real estate places. So yeah, it was
Yeah.
also good. So it was hard for him mostly. For me it was understandable. It was logical. Like, I was thinking about that. I saw this way for a long time. So for me, I already
Right.
got used to it. And yeah, I came at some point. I came just explained that here is our situation. This is what probably we're gonna do. This is what we should do. This is what we can do.
So you start doing this business consulting.
Hmm.
You kind of like pair it thinking about your psychology background as well. When did the kind of coaching and other kind of like psychology stuff, like what was the rest of your time in Ukraine like?
So after during 2019, I just started to like touch the ground, like what it's like. And I got a few clients, and the sessions that I built for them, they really liked it, and the feedback was great. And basically, since then, I'm working on the word of mouth. So I don't
Mhm.
have website, I don't have anything, and it works. After 2019, when we completely reoriented to the basically to the only rent part, so when everything was done with the previous direction of the company, and I got a lot of time to actually put effort in this area now, I of course I went to all the courses that I found beneficial. So, first of all, neuroscience. You have to know how our brain wired to actually
Yeah.
understand how you can work with it. And then I found a brilliant person who is Russian. He is a genius of our time. I truly believe in that. And he founded the whole academy in St. Petersburg, in Russia. And luckily, he had all these courses online too. So I didn't have to go to Russia to actually study, so I could study online with them. And there I met people who share the same interests, who are also with like big business background, and they are curious about the neuroscience because they need knowledge to apply in their business environment. And somehow I become a part of the group of three people who share the same interest, and we started to build trainings for like big companies. And that was very interesting part of the work, because one thing is one-on-one consulting. It's like it's one way of work, but another way of work is when you actually build an experience for like 12 sessions for like 10 people at the same who works at the same company. They might work in this different positions, but they are still an internal team of the company, and you want to build experience for them to help them understand all the um, cognitive biases, for example, that people fall into when they make decisions. And it's not only telling, like, this is the cognitive bias and this is how it works. No, because words don't make this impact. The only thing that make impact is your own experience. So
Yeah.
you have to interact inside your team the way you not only make these mistakes, because we do make these mistakes, but also you need ability to reflect on them, see, actually, like, notify them, name them, and then understand why it's important to work together in a different way. So that was thing that we started to do, and it was very interesting and also very impactful.
This is I'm seeing a couple of different threads
Yeah,
here on your journey, which is super interesting. One is like you're talking about like the example of cognitive bias. You are finding one of those examples like you did with school where there's the theory and then there's the practical application, and you're actually like taking some of that theory and like in real time working with
yeah,
individuals in like within their
that's a
teams in
good
order
way.
to actually find places to apply
Yeah,
it.
that's a good way of
Um,
looking at it. Yeah,
and then the other thing, which is kind of like maybe further along in your journey, is like really understanding how to bring this kind of like psychology, like therapy based approach to building health and more dynamic workplaces,
yeah,
which is more closer to maybe the company, what the company you work for now. So it's really interesting to kind of like see that part of your narrative.
yeah.
I mean, is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's pretty much fair to say, and thank you for that. Actually, thank you for putting it this way, because yeah, that's right. That's true. That's probably that's one of the things that I'm mostly driven by. So I take in knowledge and put it into the practical experience, not only for me but also for people around me. So
Hmm.
that's interesting. Like that,
Yeah,
I find
very
this
cool.
valuable.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
Um,
this is how so most of like this training for organizations, so basically like organizational development, if that's the right term for this in English, that become one of the main lenses for me, But on the other side, again, because of the word of mouth, I started to get clients for one-on-one sessions. And again, the same instruments that work in group settings, they can be very beneficial to work in one-on-one settings. And I am pretty like diverse psychologist in terms of the range of the issues that I work with, because I can because of the difference in probably in coaching and psychology counseling. I am, and because I understand this difference, and because I also understand that sometimes people come not to fix their problem, but to get probably like motivation or just to figure out what they deal with.
Put a name to like actually like understand the
Yeah,
problem is
understand the
probably the
problem.
first step,
Yes,
right? Yeah,
yes. So
absolutely.
sometimes they don't need a fix. They are able to fix everything themselves at the point of time when they understand what they have to fix.
Hmm.
There is a two different approaches, and I work
Do
with
you think
both
that
of
it's
them.
one is more proactive, where it's like, oh, here's a pattern of what I've seen in this particular problem I have with the people that I work with, and like actually I can get ahead of it by thinking some other way. I think we're thinking in general concepts. I'd
Mhm.
be curious if there are any examples that come to mind, whether it's like in an organization or one on one, with obviously without revealing any names
Mhm,
or sensitive
mhm, mhm.
information. I'm curious if there's an example that stands out to you about a moment where if something really stands out to you as an example of they weren't coming to me with a problem to fix, but to understand the problem and how that impacted them down the line.
Yeah, so this is also impacts the term of the therapy itself. So sometimes when people come to understand, it's going to be short term sessions. Like usually we need to have about 3 sessions. Like we don't need more, uh, just to figure out what happens. And with long term requests, like I have a few clients who I work with for a few years, because like for example when you deal with sexual abuse, it's
Hmm.
something that impacts a lot of areas of your life, so you need to work through all of them, and it takes time because we cannot work on everything at one time. And also when we fix something during the life, other things come up, and like person wants to continue fixing all of that until some point they feel that it's enough, and usually it takes time. When for example another case, so when person comes to me because they feel lost about the decisions on their work. So they are thinking if they should find another job, quit the one that they are into right now, that they were promoted to a higher to managerial position, and they with this promotion they start to think, should I actually find another job because I this is not what I feel like I want to. In this case that I am talking about in particular, it, it's a 40-year-old woman who was promoted from the local manager to a much higher position because she's very good employee. She's very well in her job, and she was always trying to do even more, to like take one step further, and it was appreciated by her managers. But at that point of time, the main goal that she had was that we figured out was what should she do to make sure that her 14 and 15-year-old sons will not go to the army. And she came
Wow.
with a request about the job. But what we found out is that her main priority is this one. And this is
Yeah.
what her whole life strategy builds around.
Yeah.
And that's why she was considering like finding another job, because she felt that she will get much more responsibility with this promotion, which will take effort from her main priority. But she didn't know what her main priority was, she didn't name it first. So when we found it, we realized everything went to its places. Like when we found it, we realized why she's making these decisions, why she's considering to find another job, why she's not happy with this promotion. And one of the solutions for her in these promotions was to start delegating. But now she understands why. It's clear for her that she is going to delegate a lot of stuff on her new position because she needs effort to put in other place. So everything just become clear for her. It's not a long-term thing. We did 3 sessions with her.
No, totally. So she came to you thinking, "Hey, I got this
Yeah.
promotion." I just want to
Yeah.
know that I'm understanding this. She came to you thinking, "Hey, I got this promotion, but I'm unhappy here." She was unhappy with the level of responsibility to some degree. It sounds like.
So the symptoms were that she was struggling to wake up in the morning. She
Wow.
still wake up, she still go to the work, but the level of effort that she realized, she noticed that she needs to put into this was much higher than it was a few years ago.
Yeah.
So she just found this difference. She noticed this difference, and that was like one of the things that she noted.
Okay, and then this is so interesting. And she found that it was much more for her, like the effort to do all of these things that maybe a few years ago might have come to her a little bit
Yeah,
more readily, or she would have been more excited to do.
yeah,
And there's this thing, I think, when I look at like management training, whether it's like courses or any sort of like reading materials, blog posts, and stuff like that, people often talk about like, well, you need to delegate in order to focus on more important things or strategic things. There's this whole idea of like, when you become a manager, you have to focus on delegation.
yeah.
But a lot of times the why isn't necessarily very clear. And
Yes,
for her in
yeah,
particular, there was stuff going on in her personal life about like her sons, and specifically whether they were going to end up going to the army, that actually needed her
yeah,
time and effort, and that was being a huge drain on her energy, because that was the thing that she actually cared about
yes,
most, right?
yeah,
And she wanted to be in that. And so you ended up
yep,
identifying that was actually like the core root of the problem, was that like there was nothing about the work that was really draining her. It was that like the work was it wasn't the work itself that was draining her, it was something else entirely. But the result of that was her getting more effective at delegating at work
yes,
so that she could actually focus on
yeah,
her life and her
exactly.
family.
Yes,
Wow.
yeah.
That is
That's it.
fascinating.
Yeah, and it was an interesting case too, because all her thoughts were about work. All her thoughts were about work. She never thought that she has any personal life goal that actually is so much important that overweights all the other priorities. So again, when you understand how our brain works, you can
Hmm.
use just a few instruments that help to reduce the time to get to this point,
Yeah, yeah,
because
absolutely.
you don't need months of therapy. We are not talking about burnout, even though everything that she told, if you open the textbook, it will look like burnout,
Burnout.
but it's
Yeah.
not a burnout.
Wow. Okay. Tell me more. What came next for you?
In 2020 and 2021, it was a time for me when I like acquired new knowledge and built this courses for organizational development, and also started like one-on-one therapy and so on. And then the war happened in 2022, like the full invasion. And this shifted, of course, all the things. It changed all the things because we had to move very quickly, and by very quickly I'm talking about like 5 hours. So you have to
Oof.
you have to leave everything that you have in your home, and like take only the necessary stuff, your cats, necessary stuff, and you should go. That's it. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And we moved to another city inside Ukraine because all the borders were shut down, and my husband couldn't leave Ukraine anymore. And yeah, we moved there, and it was like about a half, maybe like 3 months, when I was doing only volunteer work. So I shifted to help, to psychology help as a volunteer. I did whatever I could do to send packages, to like arrange people moving out from the territories that are under attack, and all the stuff. Yeah, and this group that I became a part of, where we built all this company trainings, this group never left. So we just reoriented. We built a few programs to help those who had to move adjust in the new place. And these
Right.
programs were built for volunteer initiatives in Germany, in Poland, in other countries who was the main, how to say this, the main hubs of refugees from Ukraine.
Right.
Because like first few months it was crazy. People had
Yeah.
no idea what to do, and they were in the different country with different language. They most of the times they don't know English even. Like I'm not saying about German or Polish or any other language. And people over there, they also don't know what to do with all these people, like how to actually help them. And they see fear, they see frustration, they see that people cannot put their thoughts together and like all of that stuff. They also need help.
Yeah.
They as a volunteers, they need help in structuring their efforts, in understanding what actually these people need and how to
Right.
provide this help. So we built a few programs to help in the early stage accommodation of refugees from Ukraine, and we spread out it through other volunteer initiatives.
I see. So the war really starts in earnest. You move out very quickly, and then you pivot from
Hmm.
essentially everything that you were doing to essentially like supporting
Yeah.
your fellow Ukrainians like as a part of the war effort,
Yep.
like defensively, right? There's pro bono therapy that you're giving. You're actually putting packages together. There's practical stuff then to make sure
Yeah.
that people are fed and can leave if they want to. And then you move into essentially like accommodating refugees as these countries in Europe
Hmm.
and kind of like sharing it with those teams that are taking in refugees. Is
Yeah,
that accurate?
that's correct. And after 3 or 4 months of this, like I was still under the influence of all the things that were happening in Ukraine. But the main idea that stick to my mind is that like I need to move forward. Whatever happens next, the one thing that I can be sure is that time will pass. That's it. And if I'm sitting at the same point and not doing anything to rebuild my life or to build my life from scratch, because I have in 3 months my native region was occupied, and I understood that and it's still occupied. I don't have where to return in Ukraine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I realized that okay, so probably I need to build life again from scratch, which is again okay. But this was the point in time when I started to look for any other opportunities where to move, and Canada was one of the most attractive ones because
Hmm.
they provided work permits for Ukrainians, they provided insurance for Ukrainians. Like you could get visa only by online application, so you don't. And when you come here, your like next steps are pretty obvious. So after 2 years or after even 1 year here, if you find a job, you can apply for permanent residency, and then after another 2 years you can apply for citizenship, which is the most shortest time I've
Yeah.
ever seen across all other countries. Like in all other options you need 5 to 10 years, and sometimes you will not get a chance to get citizenship.
Right. Yeah. And so did you come when you ended up coming to Canada?
Hmm.
Were you there with a work permit to start? Did you come to Canada first, or were you looking for a job first?
Oh no, I came to Canada first.
You came to Canada first,
Yeah.
and then did you come with your
No, I
family? And
came alone with my cat. It
okay,
was a leap of
yeah,
faith, because I
yeah,
came into nowhere. I had no idea about the life in Canada. I connected with one of the volunteers on this site, on Canadian side, and she connected me with a family who agreed to host Ukrainian for a while,
Mhm.
and they hosted me for a few months. But then I found a job here, so I was able to rent the place on my own, and I'm still grateful for them for hosting me for a few months for absolutely no charge. So it was
Yeah.
very
No,
nice
of
of them.
course.
Yeah, and when I came here, like I came with a one like medium-sized luggage backpack and kennel with a cat. It was also very interesting experience because you need to understand how to package everything that you did before, in
Of
the
course.
way so someone who are you talking to will understand who you are. And
Right.
that was the main challenge for me because whoever you meet, first of all, they see you, whatever story you tell them, they see you from their lens. And I started to see how people see me through their lens. And I was like, okay, right now I'm talking with a person who has consulting agency and they are consulting government institutions about their like policies or something like that. And when I tell her my story, that I was in the pharmacy chain, that I became a consultant psychologist, and I have experience in organizational development and so on, she picks stuff that is more relatable to her. And this is how she gives me feedback. So she combines what is relatable to her from her own experience, and this is how she see me. So that was very interesting.
So you have to find a way to kind of like sell or at least convey the things that are impressive about your background
Yeah.
and the things that you're capable of to folks that might see you a particular way because they know who you are, where you're from, and to a large degree the circumstances of your presence in Canada,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so they're just going to kind of like pick out like what is it that I actually like need you
Yeah.
for,
Yeah. Exactly.
and not necessarily taking you as like your whole person with
Exactly.
with the whole history.
Yes. And also it's hard
Yeah,
to, like we, even like with you, we need some time, like about 10-20 minutes to actually, for me to explain who am I and what expertise do I have, because I have a lot. And
yeah,
not everyone is willing to do that. So
yeah,
when you are an immigrant here and you have very limited amount of money, because life in Canada in comparison with life in Ukraine is so much expensive,
yeah.
so you have limited resources, limited time, limited everything, and you need to find job, but you also don't want to find something that will not utilize at least some part of all of your
Of
experience and
course.
expertise that you have. So,
Yeah.
and I understand that it's unsolvable problem for people with medical background, because you cannot become like an optometrician here without diploma, without education in
The
Canada, even though you had like 30 years experience in surgery.
One of the things that you said about like leaving Ukraine was like, hey, like and this is what I'm hearing, so definitely step in and correct me if I'm not getting this right, but I've done what I can here, and I need to find a life for myself, and I
Yes,
need to build something for
yes, that's
myself.
exactly what it was.
Um, and okay, and you know, I can imagine that was a really difficult decision to make. And like you would come alone, right? Like obviously you have your parents, you have friends, you had
Yeah,
your husband there as well.
yeah.
How are they doing? Like what?
Oh
Yeah.
wow, people. So I visited Ukraine last December, so it was like
Okay.
half a year ago, and people adjust. The main ability of our kind is just it's being able to adjust to any situations and any conditions. So people adjust to all the air alarms, to electricity shutdowns, to everything. So yeah, they are irritated and angry about the war. My parents specifically, they are okay. So they have their retirement income. They found we were able to find very nice people who don't charge them rent. So they own like so they basically they are hosting them in their apartment for free. My parents
Yeah.
pay only like utilities, and that's it. but it's no, it's okay. It's the same that they will do in their own home, but they
Right.
don't live in their own home anymore. So they are pretty much okay. Everything is familiar to them, and life in Ukraine continues. Life in Ukraine goes on because still a lot of people there. Like we had 45 million people, I think, before the war, and it's still around 30 millions right now. So it's
Right.
still a lot of people there. And when I visited my parents, actually, if you don't listen to what people talk in the lines, because everything that they talk about is only war, like bomb shelling, war, decisions of one president, another president, and stuff like that. So if
It's like the weather at that point.
yeah,
It's like all around and what you,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So if you don't listen to what people talk about, and if you don't listen to the news, you will not even mention that the country is in war because
Yeah.
life goes on as usual. Sometimes, quite often, because electricity shutdowns were about like probably the whole each day. So, specific areas of the city, like this area or that area, don't have electricity during like 6 hours during the day.
Yeah.
So people bought generators. They found the way how to still continue operate as the stores and the businesses. So they found a way how to get electricity even though it's not supplied
Right.
anymore.
Yep.
So yeah, they used to it, but they are tired and irritated about all this situation, which is again logical and understandable. And yeah, all of them wait when it's finished finally.
Yeah. 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 It's a testament to human resilience,
Yeah,
right?
basically yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's tragic, but it's obviously like that resilience part of it is obviously like really impressive, and I think like introduces a lot of hope in that story.
I hope so.
So tell me about, so you get to Alberta, right? And you're looking for work. It's
Yeah.
just you, a little backpack, medium sized luggage, and your cat. You stay with a host family for a little
Yeah.
while, and then what was Headversity? What came next? What was the
Basically,
timeline there?
Headversity what came through networking. So and even here when I came here after a week in Canada, I connected with a girl who already started in a volunteer initiative for Ukrainians. She was a career advisor at that time, and she
Hmm.
helped Ukrainians to build their resumes, to prepare for interviews, and so on. So
I see.
I connected with her and asked her what's the main point that she feels not working in everything that she's doing, and she told that bridging the gap between theory and the practice is something
Ah,
that she doesn't know how to do, and I told I know exactly what you need to do. And
wow.
we built a series of workshops that were specifically made to build a skill of resume writing. That was one workshop. Another workshop to build the skill of going through interview, and the third workshop was to build the skill of building a network here in Canada. So it was 4 hour workshops, each one of them, and we ran them each weekend, and like we hosted like 50, 60, 70, 80 people sometimes on these workshops. And yeah, we basically combined her expertise with my understanding how to put theory in practice. Exactly what you told before. So
Right.
yeah, we did this for a year probably. Yeah. And because we did all of that, and because my main goal was to build a network here in Canada, because like you need other people, because other people know other people. And this is how I found Headversity. And basically, I I met with the person who was interested in helping Ukrainians. Again, was her volunteer job, and she introduced me to her friend, And this friend decided, okay, I'm going to meet over coffee with a Russian speaking girl. Why don't I invite my other Russian speaking friend? And this other Russian speaking friend was the girl who almost started to work at Headversity, but she decided to go pursue another opportunity because she got two offers at the same time. But when we met over coffee, we were supposed to meet two of us, but it was three of us. And when she heard about my experience, she told me, like, I know exactly where you have to work, exactly, with all your background and experience. And she wrote a very nice email to HR person in Headversity because she was already connected with them through her interview process. And she sent there my resume, and they reviewed my resume, invited me to the interview. And after even the first interview on site, I went out of the office with the feeling that I am perfect fit for them, and they are perfect fit for me. And
Yeah.
if they don't agree to hire me, well, okay, I'm going to be sad, but it's a good opportunity for them to have me on board.
Yeah.
And they decided to hire me, and this is how I found a job, and this is where I work still for 3 years.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about Headversity, what they do, what your role is there, and I'd love to dig into kind of, given all of the stuff that we've talked about, what you've learned about, what Headversity is trying to accomplish and how that ties with your kind of psychology work and
Yeah,
interests.
so Headversity is a company who basically they are B2B SaaS company. I think so. Yeah. They worked with other businesses and they provide a service of rising mental health awareness in employees of the company. So they have foundational training in mental health areas. So they provide certifications. Also, they provide like personal training through the set of lessons and practices. And they provide group training through the set of basically group setting, like training in a group setting around mental health that offers you a way to start the conversation about different topics in mental health and gather people together to and give them a chance to talk about stuff that they usually don't talk about in mental health areas. So I started with them as a research analyst because at that time they needed somebody who understands the psychology but also business needs, which is me. Yeah, and I started as a research analyst, and like my first job assignments were to continue develop content on the platform. And one of the main things that Adversity did as a company and as a product company, they developed an idea of putting all the CBT practices, CBT approach into the digital experience. And that was one of the interesting challenges that I had as a psychologist who works in the startup company, in the digital company, in mental health area. So I had to figure out how can we take a CBT approach or any other approach that I know, and how can we digitalize this approach. And we had to digitalize it with all the product requirements, like it should not be long, it should not be 45-minute sessions because no one will last this long. So it should
Right.
be short, quick, and still provide you with value and benefits, and it still should give you results. Because again, on the other side of the application, there is a person who goes through this experience and they have to feel value of this experience. In other case, they will not get back anytime. So yeah, that was a challenge. And now Adversity has this practice section built, and all the practices were built from scratch. And basically this is a unique product because practices that Adversity has right now, which were yes built with my help as a specialist in this area, practices are not about meditation that all of us are used to, but they are about reflection. They are about like building skills. They are about going through specific models of solving tasks to build a skill of reflection. You need to understand how it works and how to
Yeah.
put it in like 4 or 5 questions, because this is the length of the practice. Like, it's nano practice, and it's supposed to be very short, meaning less than 2 minutes long. So you have, as a user, you have to be able to answer to go through all the reflection questions within 2 minutes. So
And what have you seen from both on the kind of like employer and employee side in terms of the impact that Headversity has had just on whether it's on the employees, like what are the kind of benefits for the businesses? I'd be curious to know what the outcomes look like.
one of other unique things that Headversity has is psychometric data. So because they build user experience, the way that you will answer a set of questions in the beginning. It's not a very long set of questions. And during your interaction with the platform, you will give the platform answers on the same questions at some point, meaning you will
Mhm.
have initial answers and updated answers, and you will know the activity between these 2 points in time. So what we have found from the data perspective is that actually people who spend like 60 to 90 minutes on the platform, they have tangible changes in their psychometrics. And another thing that I also proud of is that because I build the live events on this platform too, so there is a chance for all the employees of the clients to participate in webinars basically once a month. So we also found that participation in these very practical webinars alongside with training on the platform gives very different gives like huge impact again on psychometric results if we compare it with people who use only platform.
Yeah.
So live events don't work separately from the platform, so you need to have the
Right.
combination of all of that. And this was also like we saw the increase in stress management skills, for example, for 22%. That's why we see companies who are interested in the product of Headversity, because they also understand that they have a lot of people who needs this information, who will benefit from the information, and especially considering that Headversity has not only awareness piece but also practical piece, so we cover a lot of areas there, and also certification.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'm curious about, what does it take to, convince a company that they do need it, or what does a company need to have to understand, like, hey, this is going to be good for the workplace? What are the kinds of things that they care about? Obviously, things that come to mind to me, obviously, are things like burnout, overwork, stress impacting productivity.
Yes, one of the things that I hear quite often, and I'm not a salesperson at all. I can talk about the cultural difference in this
Yeah,
about this, but I'm not a salesperson at all. So
sure,
one of
sure.
the
I'm just genuinely
yeah,
curious.
one of the things that
Yeah.
I hear when I sit on the client meetings as a business intelligence analyst, one of the things that I hear is that people are interested to provide instruments that employees will not only use once, but will get
Mhm.
back to it.
Yeah.
And this is exactly one of the goals that Headversity wants to achieve. So, like, we build this gamified experiences and everything just to make sure that people actually get back to the platform. So, like,
Yep.
notification, a lot of stuff. And from cultural perspective, actually, when I found out about such companies, Headversity, and then I came there and started to work there, and still, I don't think that such companies exist in post-Soviet countries. Because here, I feel like we are not arguing that mental health initiatives are needed on the in the workplace. Like here in
Okay.
Canada, in US, we are not arguing about that. It's
Yeah.
something that is clear, it's understandable, everyone agreed on that. You don't need to build like any rationale behind it. That's normal.
No,
If,
yeah, that's super helpful to know.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you go to Ukraine or Russia, you will spend a lot of time just to explain that there is mental health of your employees that you need to take care about. So you need to
Huh.
explain the first part, and then you need to explain the second part. Why are you, as an employer, need to take care about your employees' mental health issues?
Yeah.
So I don't think that there is a company like Headversity in the post-Soviet countries because
Right.
there is no market for this company.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's super helpful, and it touches on one of the questions I wanted to
Hmm.
ask, which was about the cultural differences in how employee mental health shows up, between kind of, U.S. Canada versus somewhere like Ukraine. My curiosity has kind of been evolving as I've been doing these interviews and understanding people's career transitions. One of the things I think about is like workplace longevity, especially within knowledge work. And from your perspective, from a behavioral science lens, what is it that actually makes someone want to stay with a company for the long haul or longer than they
Mm,
otherwise would have?
yeah, that's also a good question. Thank you. And what I realized working in Headversity, working with Headversity, is that you always have like internal and external motivators. And again, this is I realized the practical implementation working with Headversity, but this comes from, of course, from the behavioral stuff, from the knowledge of how our behavior works. So you always have internal and external motivation, and each one of us has unique combinations of the factors that we actually feel relatable to. Like adversity specifically is the best place to work if you have very strong internal motivation. So if
Hmm.
you go there to work for yourself, so you see the benefits of doing what you're doing for yourself first, like you will thrive. And because Adversity has pretty good level of independence, so no one is tracking your time. You have an opportunity to work on the tasks that you are interested in. So like it's very good. It's very good workplace conditions to maybe show your independent thinking and stuff like that. And other companies, they do have like a lot of cultural stuff in place. So this is our workplace culture, this is what we are doing at the company, and so on and so on. So they provide a lot of external motivators. For example, like for myself, I would rather go with independence than with cultural stuff. So
Okay.
I do appreciate more like some level of freedom than a lot of like group activities that we do as people who work in the company. And so you have to think about belonging, like probably the way how feeling of belonging builds. And usually again, it's a combination of three things. One is your internal motivators, so what are you interested in as a person, as a specialist in your area. The second thing is what company can provide you with. Do they give you a sense of appreciation, for example, and how this works in the company? So do you have specific benefits if you meet your KPIs, or like how does it work in your company, and what works for you as employee? And the third thing is weird thing, if you have friends at work, because usually if you have friends at work, the probability of you leaving the company is like many times less than if you
Yeah.
don't have a friend at work.
Right.
So yeah, if your company is built the way that it encourage friendship at workplace, so this is also interesting to see.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've been reading this book, Wrong Fit, Right
Yeah.
Fit, and it's about kind of like people finding fit in different working environments. And a big part of what they're saying is like the culture of the company is it's like culture. I think you kind of distinguish culture versus like autonomy.
Hmm.
But I'm seeing culture as like autonomy would be like part of the culture, right? In the sense of like, oh, we have a culture of like everyone does their work. We trust everyone to do whatever. You get heads down and do what you need to do. We don't really care if you're in the office at some time or whatever. But anyway, the thing that I'm thinking about is, yeah, it's like most people feel they have a good fit when their environment reflects their working style.
Hmm.
So this all really resonates with me. What are the trends that you're seeing across workplaces? I'm curious about what problems they think they have versus the ones that they might actually have.
Mm.
Have you seen anything like through your consulting, like in organizations and stuff? And the reason that I ask is because at least like in your one-on-one
Yeah.
practice, you've seen people come to you with a specific problem and you've said, actually, let's talk about other aspects of your life that are not this particular
Yeah.
problem. Right? And then you've unlocked something, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious if you've seen something similar with workplaces and organizations where they think, hey, we have a culture problem, and you're saying actually you have an autonomy problem or
Uh,
something like that. As an
One
example.
of
I'm
the
just curious.
yeah, one of the main things that I saw when we did trainings for the companies, and also when I was building a few trainings on my own for small and for middle-sized companies. One of the like common things that I see in every workplace is that leadership team think that they have yeah, like you said, that they have cultural problems.
Mm,
Meanwhile, the real problem is the problem in communication. We quite often think that if we were able to name things or specify things, it means that other person who was listening to us, they understood the same. We quite often think this way. And it's in most of the times, it's not how it works. Most of the times, leadership team put a lot of effort to outline the strategy, build the direction of where we are going to develop, or like how we are going to develop our product. And they forgot that people who will actually do some work there, they have different meanings behind the same words
mm.
quite often. That's why the way how they read the document or the way how they hear their leadership, it's very different. It builds very different meaning in their minds than the meaning that leadership team wants to communicate actually. So I would say that, yeah, and then you see that it doesn't work, like leadership teams see that it doesn't work the way they hoped it's going to work, and they think we have cultural problem, like we need this and this and this to streamline the effort to navigate people, to direct them into their right resources. But most of the times it's communication issues.
And what is the antidote? And
Feedback.
what is the feedback loop?
Feedback loop, because one of the things that actually and you are doing in this session, and also a lot of people who I follow, especially speakers and those who take interviews, one of the things that they always do is they try to rephrase what they just heard.
Right.
This is a feedback loop. So I'm sharing my story the way how I share it, and then you take time to talk back to me and explain, like, this is what I hear, correct me if I'm wrong, and you give me chance to correct you if you're wrong, but most of the times you're not. But this feedback loop, first of all, it's a skill, so I bet you learned how to do that.
For sure.
And you put some effort in that. It's not something that goes naturally. You have to learn how to do that.
And it helps me learn. It helps
Yeah.
me become a more active listener when I'm thinking about, okay, how would I say this? How do I know
Mm-hmm.
that I've understood this
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing?
So
But that,
I would say that feedback loop and rebuilding the processes to actually implement the opportunity for these feedback loops. So this is the antidote of a lot of problems in the workplaces. A lot.
Yeah. And this is really interesting because you talked about naming the problem in this context and in the kind of like one-on-one context. And one of the things that I'm seeing is one of the things I might be hearing here is that in the one-on-one context, a lot of times naming the problem is like really important. And then, but you're just doing that with one other person. So they just need to like name that for themselves. So when it comes to an organization, naming something, putting together a strategy or something like that is not sufficient because there's some level of consensus building, not from the perspective of getting everyone to agree that this is the right strategy, but for getting everybody to actually be on the same page about what the strategy is. Like that consensus building and those feedback loops are actually informing naming the problem at an organizational level.
Yeah.
And communication and those feedback loops are the pathway to get to like naming the problem.
Yes. Yeah.
At an organizational level, concept of naming the problem takes an additional step of building consensus around understanding what this problem or strategy actually is going to be.
Yeah, because when we talk about any problem on the level of the whole organization, the problem looks and names this way. But when we go level down, to solve this problem, all these people need to solve any other, like a lot of other problems.
From your counseling work all the way through to your own personal journey, I think one of the things that we've talked about quite a bit is resilience and human resilience. And I'm curious how your view of human resilience has shaped how you think about the workplace.
My view of human resilience. That's a good question. You know, like probably one of the things that come to my mind is that usually whatever size of the company is, usually company is a representation of the mind of its leader. So whoever started the company, however their mind works, this is what you will see in the company. Realize like what are the mechanisms of overcoming issues your owner of the company have. So what do they have in their toolkit for overcoming any problems? And this is what you're gonna see inside the company. So if your leader is somebody who is used to push through the problem, you will see KPIs, you will see a lot of stuff that will build this atmosphere of pushing through the problem.
Right.
Usually it's how it works. So in Headversity, we have a psychiatrist as a leader, and he's a very calm person. Like I feel very comfortable there because I feel that a lot of processes they are naturally built the way to support and understand the person, but still provide enough independence. Because again, he's psychiatrist. You
Yeah.
will not solve all the problem for the person. You will not put
Right.
them in the hard conditions. You will provide level of independency, still with the opportunity to communicate, to connect, to talk, and so on. And this is what I see inside the company. Like I can easily go to their office and start talk about some ideas, even though I have like a layer of managers between me and them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Julia, anything else that you would like to leave me with today?
Oh, just a thank you note for
Oh,
arranging all of this, and it was a very interesting conversation. You made me think about a lot, so thank you
no,
so
I'm
much
glad.
about it.
Thank you. I'm so glad that we met and that you reached out when I was stalking you on LinkedIn, and then we
Oh,
got to
my
connect. And
pleasure.
yeah, no, this is really wonderful. I learned a lot, and your story is incredibly compelling, and I think your resilience through so many different like tough times are also really instructive for people on kind of understanding where they are, how to make a decision and prioritize themselves and the choices that they make in order to find what really resonates with them and put themselves in a position so that they can actually pursue that. So I really appreciate it. I
Thank
think
you so much.
anyone listening to this really will too.
Thank you so much. Questions were wonderful. Like they really make me think about a lot and connect
Appreciate
the
it.
dots from all over the places, which help you to build another, like somewhat different picture that you had before, even about yourself. So thank you so
Totally.
much for that.
It's one of my favorite kind of like side effects of doing this is being able to find another angle that like resonates with whoever I'm talking to.
Wonderful.
So
Yeah, thanks.
cool.